Kicking off our list at number 10, plasma shield. You'll need your tinfoil hats for this entire video. I'll just start by saying that. Thumbs up and the tinfoil hats, both equally as important. Billions of miles from the center of our solar system, there's a wall. Big Game of Thrones space wall. Beyond this wall, what's over there? We have no idea, really. It's like the boundaries of an old video game. It's just blurry and it's mysterious. There's some sort of energy that protects us from deep space radiation. There has to be, and when NASA's twin Voyager probes passed through this exact region only 3 years ago, astronomers saw that the heliopause is a physical wall of plasma that deflects away the worst radiation in the cosmos. So yeah, a big gooey wall is protecting us from aliens and radiation. That's pretty cool. It's not a hypothetical anymore. The Voyager passed by recently. This shield may actually deflect about 70% of cosmic rays from entering our own solar system. I can't even comprehend the size here. That's just the start too. We're only finding out more things. James Webb is here to fuck shit up. Number 9, dead planets. When a star runs out of fuel, it can become a white dwarf. It's the skeleton of a star, essentially. Any planet that's orbiting that star at that point, it's toast. It's probably gonna get wiped out in the final growth spurt of the star. We expect this exact scenario to happen to us here on Earth. We're going to get swallowed by our expanding sun. Yeah, spoilers. Sorry. Either that or its intense gravity would pull us all into our own hot demise. Both pretty bad, but also pretty quick. Only a couple years ago, astronomers discovered an intact planet still orbiting a white dwarf star for the first time ever. This was impossible up until this point. This odd orbit sits 2,040 light years from us here on Earth, and the white dwarf system has its own Neptune-like planet that is slowly evaporating. It's disappearing every 10 days. That's a full orbit over there, just 10 days. Yeah, Happy New Year's, good game. Also, we're disappearing. That's lovely. It's depressing, but this brings light a new theory, that dead stars can actually host planets, even if it's only for a short amount of time. And then, it evaporates us and swallows us whole and burns us. Well, one of the three. It's all gonna suck. Number 8, solar tsunami. I've seen this one here on Reddit a few times, and it's baffling each and every time. Some folk on Reddit actually believe that shadow beings live in the sun, and that this is actually footage of an alien leaving our sun. Solar flares look odd, but I don't think that it's a quick pit stop for aliens. I'm not totally convinced either way. I don't know. In February 2019, researchers described a solar phenomenon called Terminator events, which, first of all, jarring name, Terminator, okay? These Terminator events are massive magnetic field collisions at the sun's equator. Now, subsequently, these collisions result in twin tsunamis of plasma tearing across the star's surface. It travels at 1,000 feet per second. It's pretty fast. It's kind of like the tsunami scene from Interstellar, only way worse. Totally way worse. Solar tsunamis could last for weeks at a time and may occur once a decade, so keep your eyes peeled. No, actually don't look at the star. Don't look at any star, ever for that matter. Especially not ours, or you'll go blind. Number 7, lost habitable worlds. Remember back in 2020 when we casually discovered phosphine on Venus? Yeah, in the middle of 2020 of all time, data from 40 years ago resurfaced, and it was documents from an old NASA mission where they may have overlooked this phosphine for the entire time. Yeah, whoops, didn't see that sign of life there for 40 years. Found it, let's talk. Yeah, this compound of phosphorus and hydrogen, this is eye-opening. So what's next? Well, NASA is interested, to say the least. They're currently preparing to launch 2 new missions to Venus to check this out. This is part of NASA's Discovery program that they're launching in 2030, so we still got a little bit of time. The Da Vinci Plus and the Verida S. Now the first one is a deep atmosphere Venus investigation of noble gases, chemistry, and imaging. Kind of a mouthful, but that's why we say Da Vinci. There we go. Then the second one, the second drone, will map Venus' surface and study its geologic history and hopefully get an understanding as to what happened to such a lost habitable world. Yeah, maybe there's humans there. Maybe we got old and we died and then we came here. Oh, number 6, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon tweeting about going to Mars, but when NASA talks about it, it's interesting. I get an eerie feeling. I'm like, oh, I kind of believe this a little bit more. Elon's Twitter is a little off the chain, so more than fair. They're old school, you know what I mean? They're like, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. Stay tuned. Papers everywhere. It's so NASA to have papers all over the place when you discover something. Well, in 2022, quite recent, just back in January, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. And we got Venus, we got Mars. What's next? Earth? Yeah, gotcha. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis over at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting, but we would really need more evidence to say we've identified life." Okay, so we're close. We're definitely close. We need more evidence, not all the evidence. We just need a little bit more. and then we're finding aliens up on Mars, the big red planet. Imagine going to Mars with Elon Musk. Like, imagine like winning a trip and that's what you get. I would pay millions of dollars to not do that. How does that sound?
Up next is the City of the Gods, number 5. Teotihuacan is its actual name. This sprawling ancient city in Mexico is known best for its astronomically aligned buildings and complex pyramid temples. Their building was dated back 2,000 years, and scientists have suspected a mixture of cultures including Mayan, Zapotec, and Mixtec built the city so that they could house more than 100,000 people. They adorned it with murals, and they had a transportation system. Evidence shows advanced agricultural practices that earned the city a reputation of being much more technologically developed than should be possible in pre-Aztec Mexico. So naturally that brings us to the ideology of aliens, especially as the most massive temple, the Pyramid of the Sun, which is one of the largest constructions in the Western Hemisphere. It's also been noted that the alignment of the pyramids is based on calendar cycles. Many people believe that the flat-top pyramid served as a landing pad where the alien secrets lay inside the impenetrable walls. In 2003 though, a sinkhole caused by a flood led to the discovery of the Avenue of the Dead tunnel connecting the Sun Temple with the Temple of the Plumed Serpent. People believe that this connection correlates with rituals and contacts shared between civilizations and aliens, these tunnels being used to transport sacrifice or make passage between the communication stations easier. Its name was given to it by the Aztecs when its deserted ruins were discovered sometime in the 1300s. It had already been abandoned for centuries at this point. When the name's translated, it means the place where men become gods, and why they chose to name it that, we're unsure. When the Aztecs found it, there was likely a great amount of discernible history available in contrast to today's standards. Perhaps they saw writings and stories that we didn't, something to make them believe in godly powers of the temples or the peoples. We know frustratingly little about this mysterious society, from the conditions of its rise to the circumstances of its collapse to its actual name. The Delphi site of Greece is number 4. Alien theorists love to use Greeks as a basis for their theories. This is because of the possibility of life beyond Earth is one that began in ancient Greek world, originating at least as far back as the 4th century BC, when ancient Greek society had schools of thought that speculated extraterrestrial life. One of the favorite examples is Delphi, Greece, where the stone masonry is eerily similar to that of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, which is believed to be a site of alien intervention. This was also the famous site of the Oracle of Delphi, a prophetic woman who would reside in the temple of Parnassus. She was rumored to have sat on a golden tripod over a fissure in limestone where she could breathe in the breath of Apollo and communicate with invisible forces. What she was breathing in, we aren't sure. According to toxologist Henry Spiller, both of the ways an oracle's vision would occur, either peaceful and slow or erratic and barely legible, are symptoms associated with inhalation of hydrocarbon gases, aka she could have just been zooted. But with the architecture as a star, alienologists jumped to say that this perhaps too could have truly been alien communication. The oracle was said to be possessed by Apollo in order to be asked prophetic questions about upcoming war, political actions, theories of life, and more. What if it wasn't Apollo, but rather she was channeling alien messages through an unconscious state, that the fissure had been a beam of alien power going into her? Maybe that explains why Delphi, Greece is considered one of the 3 major UFO sighting hotbeds in Greece. In fact, on June 3rd of 2012, this picture was taken and posted on a UFO forum, claiming the image to contain a UFO. What do you think, faux or fact? It's Corral Soup at number 3. And despite its significance now, the importance of this site wasn't determined until decades after its discovery. Hilariously, this is because of the sheer size and complexity of it deceived scholars, and many believe that the site was more recent, so they left it largely ignored. It's in 1994, Ruth Shady was studying the site. She realized the lack of pottery wasn't because of the recency, the site was just dated before the advent of pot firing technology. Radiocarbon dating on some of the woven bags found inside the pyramid confirmed that Corral Soup were the locus of some of the earliest population concentrations and corporate architecture in South America, dating somewhere around 2600 BC, which upended history's well-established timeline, pushing it back 4600 or more years. Now since then, other Notre Chico sites have been found that date several hundred years earlier, but at the same time Corral Soup was being built, so was the ziggurats in Mesopotamia and the step pyramids of Egypt, all incredibly similar structures. Ancient astronaut theorists believe that they could be profoundly connected, especially following the theory of ancient buildings such as these that tend to average around the 4500 age range. But the largest mystery of Corral Soup remains why it was abandoned so suddenly after thousands of years of inhabitation. There's no concrete evidence indicating a single event like an earthquake or large flood that ended this occupation. Number 2 is the Nazca Lines. These are a little more famous, so you may be familiar. They lay 320 kilometers southeast of Lima magma, and they cover a total length of 1,300 kilometers of high and dry plateau. They are seemingly at random. Joining them are 300 geometric shapes and 70 figures of animals, including a spider, a monkey, a hummingbird, and a bizarre alien man figure. The biggest shapes stretch nearly 1,200 feet across and are best viewed from the air. Scientists suspect that the Nazca drawings are as many as 2 millennia old, and because of their age, size, and visibility from above, and mysterious nature, the lines are often cited as one of the best examples of alien handiwork on Earth. I mean, how would an ancient culture have been able to make such huge designs in the desert without being able to fly? And why? The longest of the lines run straight as an arrow for miles, so some believe it would have acted as a landing strip. Perhaps the art was meant to be gifts of appreciation to the aliens so they may look down at them from above. So, how did the ancients manage to create such a precise etchings from the ground without being able to fly? The only theoretical way is that people could have flown in the air at this time is with the form of a hot air balloon, as suggested by American explorer Jim Woodman. But we don't know for sure, so the Nazca lines remain a fascinating enigma. But the explanation for how the Nazca lines were physically created is quite simple. They're called geoglyphs. These enigmatic designs are made by removing the top rust-colored layer of rocks and exposing the bright white sand underneath. And for number 1, let's investigate the Sardinian giant. The Mediterranean's most important archaeological discovery of the 20th century was a complete accident and also unearthed a creepy conspiracy. When farmers are plowing their fields in 1974 in central Cabras, they hit something. That something turned out to be 5,000 fragments that underwent a painstaking and lengthy reconstruction process to form gigantic statues. 16 boxers, 6 archers, and 6 warriors. This colossal army of 26 statues has a height of 8 feet 2 inches and weigh an average of 880 pounds each. Each figure was carved from one limestone block alone. They have highly stylized features such as triangular faces, T-shaped eyebrows and noses, and their most distinctive features are their eyes. They're represented by large round circles that stare straight ahead and right into your soul. I imagine if they weren't built to be intimidating, they were anyways. Every photo I've seen feels like they see through you. This is one of the aspects that give the statues an alien look, fueling alternative theories about the ancient astronauts. What is certain is that the giants are surrounded by an aura of legend since their discovery, as they belong to the mysterious Nuraghic civilization, which very little is known of. The lands of Sardinia are also dotted with their tombs, which are called tombs of giants. Why? Because they're huge! The burial chambers are 65 to 98 feet in length and 7 to 10 feet deep, and according to the various inhabitants of nearby cities, very large bones were found in the countryside surrounding their village. Some claim that they belong to men up to 11 feet tall. Legendary painter Muscus himself found the remains of a giant skeleton in a cave in 1972, when he was still a child, and made one of these claims himself. Interviewed repeatedly by journalists, locals stand by that any giant skeletons that have shown up or been shown to authorities or the experts when they are found almost always disappeared into thin air the next day. Sometimes, so did the finder.
Number 10. TRex Arms. Alright, mystery solved, folks. Have you ever wondered why a T-Rex, one of the biggest, baddest dinosaurs in the game, have you ever wondered why their arms are so tiny? What went wrong here? How did they get the short end of the DNA dino stick? Well, scientists may have an answer. They've spent decade after decade debating TRex arms, which first of all, it's a great job. And now, at first, previous hypotheses suggested that their arms may have been used as pectoral claspers during mating, or to get off the ground after falling over. Both hilarious in this sense. But even so, there's other parts of the body that would have been used in that scenario. So it's almost like they're still useless. New studies this year suggest that these arms getting smaller was actually perfect. The arms of the T-Rex shriveled because there is an evolutionary advantage to keeping them out of the way. T-Rex, yeah, they would eat in groups, so more often than not, these idiots would bite their friends' arms off, or their own. Yeah, so they shriveled them up, kept them out of the way, Bob's your uncle. You ever bite your own finger while you're eating food? That's a personal, embarrassing moment. Number 9, Garfield Phones. Okay, hello, look who's calling. The Garfield crave began back in 1978. Jim Davis brought to life this lasagna-loving, Monday-hating cat, the OG grumpy cat, really. And as his popularity grew, of course, so did his merch. A Garfield couch with eyes, that's really anybody wants, right, in life? But the last thing you would expect to find floating in the ocean are probably Garfield phones. Also, yes, I said phones, not one phone. Thousands of Garfield phones have been slowly washing up ashore in France for 30 years now. Imagine standing there looking at the ocean, thinking about your ex, pondering life, and then a Garfield phone washes up. You're like, ugh, fine, I'll call her. This began in the 80s, but until recently, we didn't know where they were coming from, which is pretty jarring. A farmer read about these phones in an article and how they could, be hurting the environment, and he came forward and admitted he knew about the shipping container full of Garfield phones. Rene Morvan, this guy's been sitting on a national treasure, this huge secret. He says in the 80s he found the shipping container in a sea cave, which, imagine thinking you found some sort of lost billions worth of treasures, but it's just this. If the ocean gives you plastic phones, you answer it. Number 8, holes. If you have trypophobia, you may want to skip this one, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty odd. Off the coast of Big Sur, California, a survey revealed about 15,000 holes, all underwater, just on the ocean floor. For some reason, they're all the same size and they all measure up to be around 11 meters wide and 1 meter deep. Now the team at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, they found 15,000 of these, and they found 5,000 more that are even larger. They're called micro depressions, and the big ones are called pockmarks. Initially, scientists thought that methane under the seafloor, it was just coming out to say hello, maybe that's the reason for these indents. And then they, of course, left a crater. Rovers went down there, tests were done, turns out that's not the case. No methane is involved. In fact, there hasn't been any methane down there for 50,000 years. These MDs are essentially garbage trails, and now there's deep sea creatures living in them. It's like a little underwater neighborhood. It's cute. They even found a whale skull just laying in one of them. Can you imagine that? Imagine being a crab and coming home to that. I'd move to the next micro depression immediately. Number 7, Amelia Earhart remains. The first woman to fly across the Atlantic was well on her way to setting even more groundbreaking records, but her plane tragically disappeared over the Pacific in 1937. And it's since been a great mystery where the final resting place of Amelia Earhart now is. But we may have actually found her remains back in 1940 without really knowing. They were found on the Pacific island of Nikumaroro. Now, the initial examination of these remains were reported to be that of a man. That was the general idea in 1941. Come 2018, however, now we have a different idea. Could it be? Researcher Richard Johns took another look at the long-lost remains, and since those days, we've learned more about Amelia Earhart. Photos have since surfaced online, so we compared the bone measurements to her body type, and they're pretty sure that they found our missing aviator. Number 6, abandoned whiskey. This one's pretty fun, dare I say, a little exciting? I don't know. An explorer found crates in a hut belonging to another explorer, that of Ernest Shackleton. You've probably heard of him before, it's pretty huge. Anything belonging to our boy Ernest Shackleton is a treasure, especially when it's frozen bottles of scotch. That's pretty lovely. It's probably the best case scenario, really, evidently. It's 2010, and you find 100-year-old frozen scotch that Ernest Shackleton once drank. What do? Do you drink it? Do you save it? A little bit of both. I would do a bit of both. This may be the best discovery on this list, or at least the happiest. It's been locked up, of course, since, such a historical find, but you'll be happy to know that a sample was given to Scottish distiller White & Mackay. They're now studying this recipe to try and bring it back to life, which is amazing.
Number 5, Chinese pyramids. Yeah, I know. I said that too. I had no idea these even existed. So the question you really have to ask yourself is what's worse than opening a sealed Egyptian tomb and pyramids, which we really shouldn't have been doing in the first place? Well, the answer is opening ancient Chinese tombs and pyramids, because we don't know what's going on in those bad boys. Sure, they're not as extravagant as the pyramids in Egypt, and the Egypt ones will always be number 1. It's just how it goes. But they're still mysterious. Plus, you can't compare the two. It would be like comparing Adam and me. We're both good at different things. We're both cute, both funny. He just happens to eat more glue out of a bottle than I do. Dude loves a good bottle of Elmer's. What can I say? I prefer wine. The reason why we don't know much about these mounds and pyramids is because some are still being discovered, and it was a long time ago. That's always a big factor. And of course, the Chinese government loves their secrets, so watch out. Number 4, Catacombs in Paris. I can already hear the comments. I can just see them now. I'll talk about how weird and strange the catacombs of France are, and someone's gonna go full goth on me and say, Chitty, it's kind of cool to me actually, I don't think it's that weird. Okay, yeah, it is kind of weird though. Now, it's one thing to disturb a burial ground, but another to visit thousands upon thousands of skulls just for the heck of it. When researching the subject of the Paris catacombs, the first thing that came up was a travel website that described it as maximum fun. The chief called. He said, "Ce n'est pas ça," which means it is not it. Yeah, there's like 6 million people buried there. It's kind of crazy. Just, if you want to go visit, go ahead. But the travel website actually said that. Do you believe that? Maximum fun, bring the kids. It'll be great.
And this is the skull of another skull, and there's another skull.
Like, why would you bring the kids to that? I don't know. Take them to an aquarium. Number 3, the Winchester House. Okay, kind of a stretch in this one, I know. But honestly, this bad boy should be boarded up for good. Pour some concrete in there, just extra thick nails, just for good measure, you never know. The Winchester House is a large property that belonged to the Winchester family of Winchester rifle fame. If you've ever seen a Western movie, video game, or heard your grandpa talk about it, then, well, you know what a Winchester rifle is. It's the rifle that settled the West. I'm sure our American audience needs no introduction. When someone comes along and reinvents the wheel, that person usually gets quite wealthy, as did the Winchester family. However, Mrs. Winchester had some bad luck. Family members perished, and it was thought to be because the family rifle had taken so many lives of its own. It's one thing to have a catacomb filled with skulls, but imagine if you're the reason why it's filling up. Come on, guys. Number 2, Egyptian gold. Besides the dude wrapped up in bandages chilling in a sarcophagus, there were other things left for the king in the afterlife. You might find his doggy or his kitty, jars of pickled pharaoh guts, jars and more vases. Maybe not the one from before, but lots of vases. But the most important thing you can find in there is treasures, gold, jewels, jewelry, valuables, and pretty much really anything of value. Plus, the pyramids kind of act like a car wash for valuables. For example, I could sell you a solid gold necklace, let's say for $1,000. Very nice indeed. And for the men out there, it's been a tough couple years. Let's treat the ladies this Christmas. Get them what they need. Gold necklace. You're welcome, ladies. But what if I told you the necklace I was trying to sell you once lay in the tomb for thousands of years? Oh baby, those prices are gonna get jacked up like my high school jalopy. She was rough. The point I'm getting here is no matter how much you want to ditch the high school car for something new, don't rob the grave of a powerful king. It'll come back to bite us. I just know it. If you open the tomb and there's money in there, close it, walk away. Come watch me instead, walk away from it. Don't do it. And number 1, Ayers Rock. I'm gonna be brief with this one because it's very simple. The point stands. Ayers Rock, Australia. The outback. Gorgeous place. Maybe one day I'll get to do a comedy tour down under. Look out, Aussies, I'm coming. The rock is a natural wonder and connected spiritually to the aboriginals of the area. So when people are told not to take anything from the limestone natural site, even something as little as a rock, people still do it. And when they do it, they experience a lot of bad luck and they're forced to return it. So what's the lesson? Don't take anything. Don't do it. Not you're thinking about it. Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it. Naughty, don't do it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Pompeii Chariot. Nothing like finding a sweet ride from ancient times. Once a thriving, beautiful city in ancient Rome, Pompeii was sadly destroyed in 79 AD. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius buried the ancient city in volcanic ash. Excavations, of course, didn't begin until much later, during the 18th century, and after an entire century of careful searching, the city was reopened to the public once again. All was lost during that fateful eruption, but we're slowly recovering more and more. For example, a 2,000-year-old chariot is pretty sweet. The decorations on the side are quite beautiful. They look like flower decorations, and according to Eric Poehler, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, this chariot was for the highest class. He calls it the Lamborghini of chariots. I still can't drive. Nice. Number 9, Pompeii Restaurant. Table for 8? Perfect. Another addition to the list has to be another find from Pompeii. This is the first time in history where hot food and drink eatery has been unearthed. Yeah, in case you're wondering right now, fast food was also tempting the finest back in the 1st century. Yeah, we found a restaurant in 2019, but we were too busy talking about the Avengers to care about it. The meal of the day was most likely honey roasted rodents. Yeah, that's our best guess. Archaeologists have gathered clues to find out what 12,000 people were rushing to eat every single day. Honey roasted rodents. Nice. Rolls off thy tongue, some would say. In typical human fashion, the restaurant is now open again. It's the same place. Yep, don't forget to tip. It's bad juju. Please don't tip. You have to tip. You have to. Number 8, Turkey Gladiator Arena. Yes, another arena, another staple in history filled with gruesome combat in the name of entertainment. An 1,800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020. We were all still, inside watching Ozark. Meanwhile, a 90-meter wide amphitheater was found in the ancient city of Mastura. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Colosseum, just, a lot of bad stuff. It was to host these massive professional gladiator fights with a lot of wild animals. They were involved doing bad stuff. This was around 200 AD when the Severian dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd have to travel to this place. This is where you'd want to go. Yeah, hope you have trail shoes on and great knees. Ugh, I'm getting weak just looking at those hills. My patellas are like, no, I don't want to go. Can we go to Rome, please? Number 7, the great treasurer. Ta Mwish had a pretty sweet job back in 1200 BC. He was the head of treasury under Ramses II, aka Ramses the Great, the third pharaoh of Egypt's 19th dynasty. He once ruled from 1279 to 1213 BC, and about a year ago we found his royal scribe's tomb. And it's pretty fancy. It's very fancy. The site also includes tombs of other statesmen from the 19th dynasty, of course buried in Saqqara, Giza. In typical tomb fashion, Cairo archaeologists found writings and drawings that tell us more about Egypt's time under the ruling of Ramses the Great. And it looks nothing like any of the graffiti we have today. Where art is gone. Like natural history of art and stuff, it's just we've lost that. Now we have Twitter. That's how we're gonna be remembered by. Twitter and sporks. That's all we'll find in thousands of years. Number 6, the lost city of Hiraklion. Before it was discovered in 2001, the ancient city of Hiraklion was barely mentioned in texts throughout history. Yet archaeologist Frank Gaudio still found it. What an OG. It was hiding in the depths, around 7 kilometers off the coast, and it was pretty obvious that it was an ancient city because, well, there were 64 shipwrecks, and 700 anchors, and 16-foot statues just hanging about. One vessel was around 80 feet long. It was a classical Greek flat-bottomed ship, with oars on both sides and a massive sail. It was a bit hard to find this wreck, seeing as it was hidden. It was hidden 15 feet under the collapsed temple of Amun. Good problems, I'd say, you know? Like, there's treasure in the way of finding that treasure. Where do I even start? A project led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, a lot of words, obviously kept searching, so they also found a 4th century Greek funerary area. Yeah, ancient graveyards underwater. Guy, watch a movie. This is how you get cursed. Let's move on. Number 5. Fake France. Towards the end of World War I, Paris was tired of, seeing their city of love get blown to smithereens, as one would. So they figured, you know what? Let's try and fool those Germans, right? Let's try and do some trickery. Let's just build a fake Paris and then shut out all the lights. And it worked. Yeah, they psyched them out. They created a decoy, a very large decoy. The life-size stunt double was posted up only a few miles west of the actual city in order to protect it. This tiny town called Masons Lafayette, now of course it's looking a lot more full than it was when it was, a hollow shell of a fake town. Now it's a tourist area. There were once 3 different zones set up around the real Paris. Zone A was northeast of the city, had fake train stations, mimicked a suburban region of St. Denis, but it had a big fake Gare du Nord train station, right? That was the main pull. Like, hey, come on, we're looking nice and hopeful, come attack us, and it worked. Zone B, northwest of the city, that was Masons Lafayette, the main fake Paris, right? And Zone C was the industrial area, just east of the city. They had massive factories built with, obviously nothing inside of them. This sounds pretty Home Alone when you think of it, but these missions only happening overnight, creating a light show with some big fancy props isn't a bad idea. It's gonna save a lot of lives and money. Lights were carefully spaced out so it looked like a breathing city from above, and they fell for it, for some of the time. They Looney Tuned the Germans, and it worked. They're like, yeah, it's Paris. Hit that really fast, it's good.
Number 4. Space junk. In 1961, John Glenn would become the first astronaut to successfully orbit in space. He lapped the Earth a couple times with the help of Friendship 7, NASA's command mission pushing ever closer and closer to the moon. While in space, Glenn and fellow crew noticed tiny gold particles that shone like fireflies. Quote, this is Friendship 7, try to describe what I'm seeing up here. It's a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They're around a little, they're coming out of the capsule, and they just look like stars, a whole shower of them coming over. They had come to the conclusion it was liquid from inside the capsule and the suits leaking out. And that liquid was urine. Not aliens, not fireflies, not disintegrating ship, frozen pee-pee. Yeah, guess drinking all that Tang all day. Glenn flew on Discovery in 1998 and became, at age 77, the oldest person to fly in space. At the time. Damn Shatner.
Number 3, Project MDXX. If you've seen Project X, this one's gonna ring a bell or two. About 500 years ago, yep, you missed it, in 1520, for 2.5 weeks in June, both England's King Henry VIII and Francis I, 2 of the greatest monarchs in Renaissance Europe, they both threw a joint birthday party that lasted 18 days, and it only cost about $19 million by today's standards. Nice. I went mini putting for my 8th birthday. That's why I called it Project MDXX. The numerals in the year, yeah, you get it, not bad. Not only was this a chance for them to celebrate their friendship, but it was also a chance for them to try and outdo one another and continue to show off. So for this huge bash, for starters, around 12,000 people showed up and gathered in the fields of the northern tip of what is now France. All tents,